Good evening, Commonwealth, and thanks for watching the Channel 2 News. I'm Ashley McDowell. Let's take a look at tonight's top stories. One new positive case of COVID is confirmed, this time in a child arriving at the Saipan airport. Also tonight, a female is sentenced for an accident that led to one man's death. And we dive into more explorations of a famous YouTuber that's showing off the CNMI. In sports, our nominee for Crash Test Player of the Century. Stay with us, these stories and more are next.
Thank you for being here with us.
For finding ways to keep things happening.
For making things feel a lot better.
Thank you.
Energize, realize, feels so good just to be alive. Time's a gift, my time is free. I can spend it on you, you can spend it on me. I can say you'll be blown away by the change you see me. And I feel alright, dance all night, put a little flavor in my life.
Thank you for staying strong with us.
And for us.
Thank you for always connecting.
For keeping us together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us
that despite this distance,
we are still better together.
Docomo Pacific, better together.
Hafa Day Tirawami and good evening, Commonwealth. Today is Friday, July 17th, 2020. One new COVID-19 case has been confirmed on Saipan, this time a young child. According to CHCC CEO Esther Munya, the child came in on the United flight from Guam yesterday, July 16th, and is asymptomatic. She says the mother tested negative. The child and mother originated from the U.S. mainland. Both are currently being quarantined at Canoa Resort. This brings the total number of cumulative positive COVID-19 cases in the CNMI to 37.
Identify these cases on the same day, just kind of emphasize that. The travel occurred yesterday. We identified that and detected that the positive case around basically later in the late afternoon, evening. And, we quickly respond to that.
Governor Torres has renewed the declaration of state of public health emergency for another 30 days, and the CNMI continues to be in a community vulnerability level blue for economic recovery. Legislators attempt to resurrect a bill that would reconstruct the administrative businesses of the government. Sally Lemus has the details.
Lawmakers met on Thursday to shoot for overriding a bill vetoed by Governor Ralph Torres. Senator Vanessa Blunt is the author of Bill number 21-23 that aims to establish the Office and Management and Budget within the Department of Finance.
In our Constitution, and it's in Article 10, Section 8, it states in the CNMI Constitution that the Secretary of Finance or the Director of Finance, which it was written back then, shall be the only person to manage the activities, the fiscal activities of the CNMI government. In no part of the CNMI Constitution that it stated that any other position shall have the authority to manage the fiscal affairs of the CNMI. That mandate by Constitution was only given to the Secretary of Finance.
Back in 1994, Executive Order 94-3 changed the reorganization of the government, which extracted the Office of Planning and Budget out from the Finance Department and put directly under the Governor's office.
The legislature, by the democratic process and the legislative process, had the option to override a veto. The override, what was necessary for the override was 2/3 of each house voting yes to override the governor's veto.
The Senate vote was 6-1 in favor of the override, but many concerns arose in the House.
Instead of just moving them back into finance, which is still going to fall under the governor's office. OMB will still fall under the governor's direction. So, but from my understanding, they forecast and they foresee the potential numbers that we're going to be getting. And finance gives us historical numbers.
Floor Leader John Paul Sablon.
Communication was pure politics. Maybe perhaps the legislation itself is pure politics. I stand ready to vote.
The override was defeated with 11 members voting against it and 9 members in favor. Ways and Means Chairman Ivan Blanco shares his reason behind his vote.
If you look at the federal government, they have a separate office, right, under the Office of Management and Budget. And they also have the separate office of the U.S. Treasury. Now, the bill, what it's trying to do is put the U.S., let's just use the U.S. as an example. You put the U.S. Office of Management and Budget under the U.S. Treasury. The reason why they don't do that is the separation of controls on financial management and the systems, right? So our auditors here continue to encourage the CNMI that we, practice internal controls to separate duties and tasks so that not one person or not one entity gets to control the setting of the ceiling of the budget and at the same time gets to expend those funds with one stroke of a pen.
Reporting for KSPN News, I'm Sally Limis.
Thank you, Sally. Those waiting on money from the PUA FPUC program may see a nice deposit in their bank account today as the first batch has been distributed.
The first, I would say, small batch is 300 real clean 300 recipients this morning will be going out, and then those numbers will increase throughout the day. The bigger batch would be probably for tomorrow morning's submission for ACH, and that would be, my hopes is, the hope of the Department of Labor is about 1,000. And then next week would be the bigger batch as we get the data from their software company, GL Solutions, the online portal, which holds more than 5,000 recipients that have entered their information in the online portal.
A release from the Office of the Governor states those who have submitted paper applications should be receiving communications from the CNMI DOL. A female is sentenced today in the courtroom of Judge Govindo for reckless driving that caused the death of a man. According to court documents, Cassandra Camacho, on December 16, 2019, was operating a Toyota Highlander in Puerto Rico. While speeding, she collided with another vehicle. Camacho received minor injuries, whereas the sole occupant of the other vehicle passed away at CHCC. DPS stated no alcohol was involved. Today, Camacho pleaded guilty to reckless driving. She is sentenced to 6 months in jail that was reduced to 30 days at the Department of Corrections and 90 days on house arrest. She must write a letter of apology to the victim's family and pay for funeral expenses. A DPS officer has admitted guilt to the criminal offense of reckless driving. It's a case that has been ongoing since July 22, 2017. Department of Public Safety Officer Dixon Kwan crashed his car and injured the passenger, Deidre Santos. Officer Kwan was originally charged with driving under the influence, reckless driving, and fleeing the scene of an accident. But there was a delay in the case because files were missing from the Internal Investigations Division by DPS. According to DPS, the files went missing when the office was relocating from Capitol Hill to DPS's main office in Susupe in October of 2017.
There were accusations that the initial investigation of the officer at the scene were not handled correctly. And that complaint was referred to the Internal Affairs, which is a couple of the officers at DPS. They conducted an investigation that included reports and recordings of interviews that, of course, would have been very helpful in resolving that issue. At the point at which they were requested for discovery, the Internal Affairs Department alerted us that those reports and recordings no longer existed. There was a hearing associated with that, and the judge found that that in losing that evidence, they had acted in bad faith. That damaged our ability to successfully prosecute this case and required us to come to an agreement at something less than we would have under normal circumstances.
Kwan is now charged with reckless driving and is sentenced to 6 months of confinement in the Department of Corrections, all suspended except for 3 days of house arrest, ordered to pay a fine of $500, and placed on 2 years of probation. It is unknown at this time if Kwan will continue to work as an officer at DPS.
We have had a number of cases involving officers, and it's important to me that those be resolved quickly and with justice. 3 years is not justice. A reduced crime, a reduced punishment is not justice. It is the best that we can do because of the circumstances that we were given. It's really up to DPS and their leadership to focus on these problems and get them resolved, and to follow up with some sort of disciplinary action to make sure that the officers understand that they're sworn officers of the public and that they need to do the best job.
Coming up, we take a look at some of the negative and positive points pertaining to the governor's trip to the Northern Islands. More coming up next.
At one of Saipan's beaches, this mother lays about 100 eggs under the cover of darkness. She hides her nest as best she can and then slowly makes her way back to the ocean. The eggs hatch and the babies head for the sea, where they will face a daily dose of danger. Just 1 in 1,000 will make it to adulthood. Those that do will one day lay their own eggs. Sea turtles are protected under CNMI law. If you see one that is stranded or if you see illegal activity, call the hotline at 287-8537.
It's gonna look a little different in here. Your favorite spot might not be exactly where it used to be. Being next in line might feel a little less like next in line. And our smiles might come with a little extra shine. But McDonald's is ready to take your order as safely as we can.
Welcome back to the Channel 2 News. A new food and revenue source for CNMI residents, or a bad environmental practice that violates a public law. We look at a trip to the Northern Islands tonight in a variety of ways. One issue with the governor's trip to the Northern Islands is the use of public resources during a pandemic, according to Representative Tina Sablon.
The first, and I think the biggest concern really, is the use of public resources for this promotional trip. We just came out of the DPS budget hearing, and we heard that there were public safety personnel, there were 2 search and rescue boats, there was a lot of fuel that was expended for multiple trips back and forth between the Northern Islands and Saipan. And on top of that, there was funding from MDA, funding from the Northern Islands Mayor's Office. A lot of resources went into this trip at a time when we are looking at a $90 million deficit, we are looking at mass furloughs and terminations, mass unemployment. There are so many critical issues affecting the fiscal health of this government and the well-being of our community. And promotion is nice to have, but is that really a priority, and is that really a proper way to spend very scarce public resources?
But Governor Torres says the trip was necessary to promote the CNMI for when tourism opens back up, and that DPS officers were there to protect him. He states his absence did not cause any adverse effects.
For the DPS boat, we transfer there. We use DPS boat. When I travel, they're there to protect me. So me, again, leaving, I didn't leave the CNMI with an hostile environment. I didn't leave CNMI when there's a spike on COVID. So, again, I have my duty here is to make sure that the health is taken care. We got that covered. At the same time, tourism, as we know, is our #1 industry. We have this opportunity, a blessing, that when everywhere else in the world is closed, we have someone who flew here from Florida across the world, basically with his family, to promote CNMI.
Another issue, Sablon says, is the release of captive deer on Pagan, and that it violates Public Law 17-23.
We have a situation where it appears that government officials violated CNMI law. It is a misdemeanor. It's subject to a fine, but this raises questions about misconduct in office, quite frankly. And this is something that I think that the Attorney General should look into. And it's my understanding that the AG and none of the assistant AGs was consulted before this trip was taken and before these deer were released illegally into the wild on Pagan.
Approval was given by the Northern Islands Mayor. The permit issued listed Robert Arrington and MVA Managing Director Priscilla Ikapo. But Governor Torres says the release of the deer was under his request.
First of all, it's not Arrington, okay? Let's not try to twist this around. We met with the Secretary of Tom Beneventi. I brought up the idea. We talked to the mayor. And Mayor gave gave us the permission to release deer up north, and so we got that permit. And so what Deer Meat for Dinner did was recorded that part of releasing the deer.
There have been over 1 million views of videos featuring the Mariana Islands over the last couple of weeks. Our Chris Nelson has more with a content creator who is here exploring the islands.
YouTuber Robert Arrington and his wife Sarah were in Saipan Lagoon waters this week, examining the northern reefs. It's currently spawning season for staghorn coral. Now, scientists say staghorn coral populations have declined more than 80% over the past 30 years due to higher incidence of disease and the impacts of global warming, especially higher ocean temperatures. Staghorn corals provide complex habitat for fish and other coral reef organisms. The hard corals grow in colonies and are the architects of coral reefs. They are particularly susceptible to bleaching events and can be damaged from typhoons.
A look at the reef up here in the northern part of Saipan. What's your first impression?
It's very interesting. I see some great signs. You can tell that a lot of the old reef, a lot of the big mature corals have died. Not sure if that's from human interaction or bleaching or whatever it may be, but I've seen this worldwide. The Bahamas, Fiji, here, Samoa, everywhere I've gone, you see the old coral has died off. Not sure why that is. But what I see here that's very promising is tons of new life. Like just right over there, I saw a beautiful giant clam growing. That's a sign of health. You see lots of new soft corals, lots of new staghorn corals, and you see it growing up in a variety of different places. That's a very good sign.
The plan this week is to head south.
You guys are headed to Tinian. What are you going to look at over there?
So, our trip to Tinian, we're just excited about seeing the island, seeing where the Enola Gay project was. We're going to go out to Goat Island, but more importantly, I just want to meet the people on Tinian. We plan on hunting wild goat on Goat Island, which is just right there next to Tinian. Then we'll bring it back and roast it, make a big cultural meal and enjoy it with friends and have a great time.
The recent expedition to Pagan has generated controversy. 4 captive sandbar deer were released into the wild there. Deer were first brought to the Mariana Islands back in the 1700s, but have never been introduced to Pagan.
The deer, you took deer up there.
Yes.
And introduced them on Pagan. It's a new thing for Pagan. You guys are from Florida.
Yep.
There's always talk about the pythons that were introduced, the non-native species, and there's some concern here about deer being there. What is your position on that? What was the thought process behind it? Tell me about that.
Okay, so I was really hoping this conversation went in that angle. The difference in non-native species like lionfish and pythons and wild pigs is the fact that they reproduce so fast and they're very uncontrollable. So we took up a young doe and a mature doe, a young buck and a mature buck. We took them from an enclosure that had been damaged by the typhoon and we took them to Pagan. This is something that's been being researched and looked at for a long, long time. Just never had the ability to be taken care of. Now, deer are a huge source of foreign tourism in the way of hunting. I have a big game, or let me say this. I have worked in the outdoor industry my entire life. Hunting sandbar deer on the island of Pagan could be the largest source of revenue the CNMI has ever known. If we can develop a healthy population of mature sandbar deer on that island, there are hunters far and wide that would pay exorbitant amounts of money to go there. That population cannot just grow out of control simply because there's a limited amount of space, which if you've ever been to Pagan, you realize there's a ton of space. But there's already 500 to 1,000 cows that eat bushes and trees and flora. There's probably equal to or more wild pigs. Wild pigs are the real problem. They're the ones that root everything up, cause soil damage, cause soil erosion, and reproduce at probably 50 times the rate of a sandbar deer. Now, if that was the case, if they were going to cause a problem, pigs would be the problem. Because pigs, they reproduce every 120 days or more. And whenever they have a litter, they're gonna have 8 to 12 piglets. A sandbar deer is gonna have 1 baby per year. Maybe 2. But the second fawn rarely lives. So you're taking one doe, let's say we have 2 does. Let's say they both have a fawn every single year. Let's do the math and figure out how many years it will take before there's even a sustainable population that could represent a source of food, much less hunting. I told Governor Torres and the Secretary of Agriculture, and I said, this isn't for us. This is for our grandkids, because it's going to take years and years and years and years.
How long do you think it will take to have a sustainable population up there that could be hunted?
My guess, 25 years. It's going to take at least that. Now, I'm going to do my best to work with some research biologists back home and some of the large corporate companies, possibly Hornady Manufacturing, about coming up here and putting some money behind those deer. Deer are the #1 game animal in the world. Sandbar deer are probably the least known deer population in the world. That means if you can develop a healthy, sustainable, managed herd of healthy sandbar deer on the island of Pagan, I promise you, people that you would not imagine will pay exorbitant amounts of money to go there and hunt them. A, because they can go fishing, they can sightsee, they can see the bunkers, they can experience that World War II culture, and then they can hunt a deer in a spot that's more beautiful than their eyes can even comprehend.
Did you guys talk about the introduction before, or have you talked about it more after there was some pushback from?
We've been talking about this since I was way back in Florida. Like, we've been talking about this for a while. As soon as Gov mentioned this to me, I thought, this has to happen. This is going to be a perfect scenario. And so then as we came, I mean, look, when the deer were in that pen that was ravished by the typhoon, thinking, man, these deer are going to go find a completely new home. Now, I would beg somebody.
Can they survive up there if they've been in captivity? Do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. The buck, we call him Mr. Chill. We filmed Mr. Chill 1.5 miles from camp, and he was already using his nose. He came in downwind of us. We were hunting chickens. He winded us. We couldn't see him, but he started barking at us. It's like, woo! Making this noise. That's like a signal. So he's already acclimated to the wildlife, and I have no doubt. And look, there's over 500 cows there. The deer cannot eat more than the cow. One cow will eat more than probably 25 or 30 deer a day, per day. There's 500 of them. We introduced 2 pairs, a mature pair and a young pair. And when it comes to water, there's plenty of water. There's every other game animal on that island lives.
Did they all make it? All the deer were still alive when you left?
Absolutely. So when we put them on the ship, I really had a bad feeling about the mature doe. We made sure and we shaded her really well. We got her settled down. And when we got there, I was not expecting good things. When we got there, she was fine. We opened the cage. She came out. She was probably... the 2 young ones were the most skittish. The 2 young ones, when we let them out, they ran off. We've never seen them again, but they ran off like, see ya! And then Mr. Chill came out. He sort of went around and we fed him some mangoes. He was cool. And then the biggest doe, we had to get her out of the pen. Once she came out of the pen, she walked, and we wanted to make sure they did not go down on the beach right away because it was super hot. So she looked like she was going to go to the beach. We ran around her, pushed her back into the island. Then she went over next to Mr. Chill, peeked around, and then went up the valley towards the mango trees. And
do you tag? Did you tag them so that if they have babies in the future, you know who are the original?
We didn't. I thought the deer were under enough stress already as it was.
Is that something people do? Do people tag deer?
They do. A lot of times, especially in thick forested areas, the tag will rip out of their ear. And if it doesn't rip out of their ear, as they're going through thick brush, it continues to pull and keeps it an open wound. I didn't know how bad the bugs were going to be. I didn't want flies laying maggots in an open wound in their ear. I thought, you know what? There's only 4 of them. We got a good idea what they look like. If anything goes forward from this, if we take more deer, we may look at some type of tagging or branding. But right now, I said these deer have been through enough. They had to make it through that trek all the way up there on the landing craft. Once they got there, they were healthy. Last thing I wanted to do is introduce any more stress to them.
And now we continue our look into the recent introduction of deer on Pagan with a researcher who has studied the effect of hoofed animals on our islands.
Anne-Marie has been to Pagan and has published research on the impact of deer in the Mariana Islands. How do you know so much about these things, and what sort of research have you done?
Sure. So I'm currently a PhD candidate at Iowa State University. I got my master's degree from the University of Guam, and my master's project was focused on the impacts of deer and pigs in the forests in Guam. And in Rota, I did a little bit of work in Rota as well. Our deer are a species from the Philippines. They were introduced to Guam in the 1700s for the purpose of hunting, and subsequently introduced to Rota and Saipan, as well as Pohnpei. But Guam and Rota probably have the biggest sustained populations of deer.
The goal of that program is to establish deer on Pagan that can be hunted one day. And
right.
What do you think about that?
I mean, if you go into any sort of history of like purposeful introductions like that, they usually spell ecological disaster in a lot of cases.
Now, we have deer on Guam. They were introduced. We have deer on Rota. They were introduced.
Yeah.
There's pigs and goats and cows up on Pagan. Is this a really big deal?
Well, I mean, that's left to be found out, I guess. I mean, I think like I understand that deer have been hunted for centuries in these islands, right? So they're kind of an important cultural animal, right? And hunters have kind of traditionally hunted them for several centuries. And so I can see some value to humans in having this kind of like another game animal to hunt. But I think we could just look back at history of other introductions on other islands. They normally don't turn out very well for the native vegetation, and that includes vegetation that could be useful to humans as well. And whether or not it'll be a profound impact on Pagan, which already has a bunch of ungulates that are, feral, that remains to be said. But I think it's really you're kind of testing a question you might not want the answer to.
The researcher says that the southern portion of Pagan may be the most affected area in the coming years.
The difference between deer and things like pigs and cows is deer are very agile and they can access a lot of places that the cows and the pigs can't. So in Pagan, some of the more pristine, like native forests exist in the southern part of the island at higher elevation, where you don't really find very many of the cows and pigs, but the deer certainly can access that. And I anticipate that they'll, if they start reproducing and they establish in those southern forests, they can have a really big effect on the native plants there.
Thank you, Chris. All right, coming up in the KSPN2 Sports Report, what is floor burn? And why do some people enjoy that? Well, we don't pretend to have all the answers, just the question.
Go-karts, off-roading, and the driving range now open at Marianas Trekking. Go-kart track will be open Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays with 50% off when you book online at marianastrekking.com, hours 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Use the promo code HAFA50 to get your discount. Off-roading is open too by reservation. Come on a 90-minute trail ride that is perfect for families. Book online at marianastrekking.com. Golfers, come practice on the driving range. You can even pay online, and we will have the balls waiting for you. Come see us weekends at Marianas Trekking, 323-8735. Welcome to the Marianas Eye Institute. Our office on Beach Road is staffed with U.S. certified eye care technicians, doctors that have received national recognition, and a friendly, professional staff that will look after you and your loved ones. With over 1,200 eyeglass frames to choose from and an in-house lab, we can make most glasses in about an hour. And we even feature a mobile clinic to bring eye care to you. Keep your eyes healthy and strong with professional eye care at the Marianas Eye Institute.
Buenas sports fans. Buenas sports fans, the KSPN2 Sports Department strives to be fair and balanced, but we admit to having failed this time and over again. But at least we're honest about it. Loyal viewers know that we're biased toward physical play. We like gritty players who are not afraid to get dirty or hit the floor.
KSPN2 Sports admires a player who's willing to sacrifice themselves for the team. One of our favorite crash test players is Gia Hemley, who's not afraid to kiss the floor. She's like a pest you can't get rid of. Her defensive style is called chest to chest. She never met a dribbler she liked. She is so prolific at knocking people down, she can even do it passing the ball to her team. Gia Hemley, the KSPN2 Crash Test Player of Whenever.
Here's the windup and the pitch.
I don't believe what I just saw!
Life gets better. Get on better internet plans with the strongest internet from Docomo Pacific. With whole home Wi-Fi, it's the better way to work, play, and surf at home with the fastest download and upload speeds in the CNMI. Your better internet comes with a free Plume SuperPod for the strongest and safest Wi-Fi coverage throughout your home. Sign up today for as low as $50 a month and get a free smart tablet. Better value for your best connection. Because in everything we do, we are always better together.
Today's high 90, low 79, heat index 105. Humidity 63%. Tomorrow partly cloudy. Excuse me. Isolated showers, east winds 10 to 15, high 90, low 78, seas 3 to 5 feet. Sunrise, triple nickels again. Low tide 12:16, high tide 4:42 at sunset. Beautiful, beautiful sunset 6:51. It's official. The weekend begins right now. Have a great one. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here Monday.